Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. My in-laws and I are on good terms. I like them very much and they've been very friendly and accepting of me ever since my wife and I started dating. Things haven't remained at their initial friendly tone considering that we have 4 kids together and have been married for over 16 years. I can safely say that I've upgraded to the position of an actual son and family member, not just an in-law. Recently, my wife has taken a new job at a company that requires her to travel quite often and spends a good majority of her time abroad, and I can express how genuinely thrilled I am that my wife got the opportunity to practice her dream job and be offered wonderful opportunities. It hasn't bothered me to take care of the kids, and I've been very grateful for the fact that my in-laws are constantly offering help and support with my temporary single parenting experience. Recently, my in-laws invited me to a family dinner to celebrate father-in-law's birthday, in which everybody would be present and bring their gifts and sing their happy birthdays and then spend an amazing evening together and go back home separately. We got to the family home and made dinner together and spent a lovely time as we always do. When we sat down at the dinner table, I couldn't help but feel a little bit secluded and exempt from conversation and had my point immediately ruled out by my mother-in-law specifically. I didn't really want to pay much attention to it, and I thought to myself that my wife's absence was making me feel targeted and insecure. That was, of course, until I got my confirmation that there was something abnormal going on. As we finished our dinner, the mother-in-law got up to toast something in honor of the husband's birthday, just wishing for family health, wealth, and happiness. And then she mentioned her dog's name had passed away very recently, and she spoke with so much emotion, passionate about the pet, that I couldn't help but tear up and relate to her emotions as I was very fond of that dog myself. He resembled my old family dog and I bonded with him due to that reason. I constantly requested that my wife ask to let me walk him or babysit him, and when my in-laws couldn't take care of him, I was basically going above and beyond just to make sure I spend time with him and be reminded of the memory of my now dead childhood pet. My mother-in-law was immediately surrounded and supported by everyone else that had rushed over to her side to hug and comfort her and wipe away her tears before she abruptly pushed everyone away and pointed at me and started directing all sorts of insults and shouts in my way. The change in attitude was so abrupt from her crying about her dog to shouting at me, calling me cruel and heartless and unworthy of familial love and care and basic human rights. Basically, she was accusing me of having killed her dog out of jealousy and envy, and as a result of the pain that I outsourced from him striking resemblance to my old dog. She assumed that all the times that I had asked to walk him were the result of my wife forcing me to do so instead of it being on my own request. She thought that I never really truly liked him. And when my wife went on this work trip, I took advantage of the opportunity and killed him so I would no longer have to commit to her requests. Obviously, that was insane, and my puzzled expression only pissed her off even more. She went on telling me how dare I have the audacity to play confused when I killed and hid him somewhere off so no one would find him, and then she cried out loud, begging me to let her know where I had buried him so she could give him a proper burial. I was very puzzled and confused to say the least, and that quickly changed as I became defensive and saddened by the fact that everybody seemed to believe her. Glances and glares at me started changing to judgmental and hateful. My sister-in-law and her husband even took their chairs that were by my side and transported them to mother-in-law's side of the table. My sister-in-law then walked up to me immediately after supper was served and told me that I should probably go home and have the kids sleep over with her kids. And honestly, I was too puzzled to argue against it, and I was genuinely distraught by what happened. I went home that day and experienced one of the saddest evenings of my life. I drank away at my wine and fell asleep, hoping tomorrow would never come. But tomorrow did indeed come, and my wife came home only a few days after having learned the events that had taken place. And she tried contacting her parents to let them know that it wasn't her who convinced me to walk the dog or take care of it, and that I genuinely would never do such a thing because I actually love the dog with my whole heart. They refused to believe her and called her co-culprit in the murder of a dog that was considered a family member. She stopped talking to them, seeing that I was no longer invited nor welcome at my parents-in-law's house. Now, I work at a security camera company that is a government program, which is responsible for making sure that the elders and retired are secured in their homes. And as soon as they purchase cameras, we are hired to review their contents to make sure there was nobody preying on these old people or trying to rob their houses or inflict any harm upon them. And only 3 or so weeks after these events took place, I was hired to look through the security cameras of a neighboring house to my in-laws. I wasn't exactly thrilled about the gig, but didn't give the situation too much care because I know that I'm innocent and they're free to think of me whatever they want. I started reviewing the footage on the cameras to make sure there was nobody doing anything suspicious and tending to my job. I then realized that their cameras had a perfect view over my in-laws' backyard. It wasn't necessarily a direct view, but through multiple angles, you could pretty much get a total vision of what happens in their yard. I don't really know if it's considered a privacy invasion or not, but I was overarched by a sense of curiosity or intuition or something that I couldn't explain, whatever that may be. The contents that I found on the night prior to the day my mother-in-law called my wife to inform her of the dog's death shook me to the core. Somewhere around the middle of the night, my father-in-law's figure appeared in the backyard and proceeded to shovel the ground for a couple of hours, making a hole that's big enough to bury something large within it. And then brought back a large black bag from his car trunk and then shoved it in the hole and covered it with dirt and planted things on top of it to camouflage it with pots and dirt bags and so on. I went home to my wife and told her of my findings, and she requested that I go to my in-laws' house and tell them what I had seen. As my wife requested, I did indeed go talk to my mother-in-law about what I found out. And at first, she refused to believe me, but she quickly realized that I wasn't lying when I showed her the videos. She was puzzled and visibly surprised, but was shocked by what she was seeing and stopped talking to her husband for weeks to follow because not only had he lied to her, he had witnessed her humiliate and disrespect and exclude me from family without feeling guilty enough to come forward with what he had done. His excuse was that the dog had died because of a heart attack, and he didn't find it in his heart to be the one to tell the mother-in-law that he had died under his watch. And so he found that the best solution would be to pin the blame on me and have me basically kicked out of the family. Everybody in the family did apologize for having such an intense and unnecessarily rude reaction to the situation. But I don't think I can ever go back to being close to them because all it took was an assumption for everybody to just drop me. These events were genuinely so abnormal and something that was so out of the ordinary for the stable, steady life that I've always lived. And quite frankly, I've learned so many lessons from this that I would have never learned otherwise. In a sense, I could say that I'm grateful that it happened, but it sure left its mark. Not the a-hole. There's so much to unravel here. Father-in-law is such a horrible person for throwing you under the bus like that. I don't think mother-in-law would have blamed him considering how much he loves the dog, and she would have grieved properly if he had told her that your in-laws seem like a snaky group of people that you should rightfully cut off. Your wife is a champ for standing up for you even when she wasn't here to witness anything and cutting them off in your defense. I wish your relationship all the best. Not the a-hole. Father-in-law is clearly a coward and a terrible person. The mother-in-law isn't a saint either because she blamed you and pierced things together just to pin things on you and point her fingers at you. Those insults came from a profound place and you're right for never trusting anyone the same ever again. Not the a-hole. I'm pretty sure this is considered invading their privacy considering the fact that you didn't just observe. You uploaded these videos and showed them to mother-in-law. Regardless, it unraveled a truth that saved you from a lot of pain in the ace, and it was worth it after all. Next story. So my neighbor across the hallway has 2 sons, 11 male and 5 male, who get home from school at different times. Within the span of 1 week, there have been 2 incidents where the eldest wasn't allowing his kid brother to enter. First incident, I had to call the police to report a lost child because no one was answering the door and the kid was standing outside his door banging and crying his eyes out. Young one had no way of contacting anyone as he didn't have a phone nor a spare key to let himself in. Second incident. This happened more recently within the 1 week span as the kid was left outside the door again. But this time, there was a driver's aide involved and she was effing pissed, banging on the door and such. No answer at the door and I-29 female opened my door to see what was happening. The driver's aide flat out said that she would contact Child Protection Services should this situation repeat as this has been ongoing between the school and the mother. The aide allowed me to keep the kid at my place until the mother got home. Even put up a note on the door. 2 hours passed and still no luck with waking the eldest. Eventually, the eldest knocked on my door in a panic because he couldn't find his kid brother, claiming to have woken up at 5:30 p.m. looking for his brother and didn't see the note I left until 7 p.m. The eldest had a friend with him at the time and I explained the situation to them. The kids recognized the driver's aide as a troublemaker and wasn't surprised that she had said that. The eldest was able to reach his mother and I tried to explain the situation. She hung up on me after I said the words Child Protection Service, saying she's coming home. She got home not too long after and chaos was happening, yelling at her kids about not going into a stranger's home and then eventually yelling at me, claiming that I'm a total stranger. No, we ain't. Had discussed exchanging numbers and having spare keys after first incident. Never happened, sadly. I tried to explain what happened with the driver's aid, but the mother wouldn't have any of it. Do not take my kids into your apartment. How dare you threaten me with child protection services? I'm a single mom trying to raise 2 kids, are a few things she yelled at me. I responded, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Just simple trying to de-escalate the situation. Sadly, the mother kept going, I had to quit my job because of you. I was immediately baffled by that. Could she have asked to leave work early due to a family emergency instead of quitting? Her yelling got so bad, my mom came out to see what was happening. Angry mama started calming down and we left it at that. Broke down crying when inside my apartment because my anger and anxiety skyrocketed and was questioning whether I did the right thing. I don't know, am I the a-hole for going out of my way to help my neighbor when they're being threatened by CPS? Not the a-hole. The kid was banging and crying multiple times because his brother isn't responsible and wouldn't let him in. That mom is leaving her kids in dangerous situations where the baby could have been kidnapped because he couldn't get into his house. You tried to be nice and help the kid and family out. I wouldn't associate with her anymore for reacting like that. Instead of being grateful her child is safe, she's screaming at those who helped. Not the a-hole. This is an awful situation and you need to disengage from it. Step way, way back. Next time something happens, apologize for not being able to help and advise folks to call the police. The potential consequences for you if this goes wrong are much worse than yelling mama drama. Your impulse is really kind. Unfortunately, this family is already under stress. A situation where a napping 11-year-old is the designated child care provider is not ideal. That mom is under a lot of stress and looking for someone to blame. Intervening in the decisions of the school representative who technically is responsible for the child, whether they're a troublemaker and a jerk or not, is taking on a lot, especially when you don't have prior arrangement with the mother. Next story. My ex and I have 3 kids, 10 female, 8 female, 5 female. We've been divorced for 4 years and are usually pretty amicable. At first, we had 50-50 custody of the girls and nobody paid child support or alimony. Then 2 years ago, she got a job that required her to move 3 hours away and she has the girls every other weekend and was ordered to pay child support. She was struggling to sell her house and paying 2 mortgages was hard enough on her, so I told her that she didn't have to pay child support until things settled down. I'm pretty well off and can easily afford to take care of the girls without any support, so I didn't see the point in making her life harder. Things settled down and I never needed child support, so I never asked. A few months ago, my brother and sister went out for drinks with their husband and wife. My brother drove drunk and crashed and all 4 of them are dead. I became the legal guardian of their kids, 14 female, 10 male, 8 male, 5 female. I can technically afford to take care of all 7 kids on my own, but some child support would help. I talked to my ex about how my circumstances have changed and I need her to pay child support now. She said okay as long as I promised that the money would only be spent on our kids. I told her I can't do that. If I use the money to buy groceries, all of the kids are going to eat the food, and if I use it to pay for the mortgage and for the renovations I'm doing in the house to accommodate for the extra people in the house, I'm not going to kick the kids out. I then told her I can put the money in a savings account for our girls, but I will deduct the same amount of money from the savings account I've already set up. This wasn't good enough for her either, and we haven't been able to come to an agreement, so I wanted to know if I was the a-hole. Edit. I texted my ex and told her I'm giving her a week to send a check for this month, and if I don't have it, we will go through the courts for regular child support and back pay. Wow, that took a turn mid-post. I'm so sorry for your loss. Not the a-hole. I think you just tell her that you're needing her to comply with court orders to pay for child support. Groceries feed your kids. The mortgage puts a roof over your kids. The fact that other kids also live here now isn't her concern. She doesn't get to dictate what you do with the money, and obviously you're not taking the money and allocating it into an account earmarked for a specific kid that isn't hers. Since she hasn't complied with the court order, tell her you'll get your lawyer involved and take her back to court. This is the overall problem with being nice and lenient with the order. You gave her an inch and now she expects a mile. Not the a-hole. Go to the court, or if you're in the US, file with your State Department or Family Services free of charge and get the court ordered support enforced. I'm not sure where you live, but if you live in the US, you should be receiving survivor benefits from Social Security for your brother's children. I made the same mistake you did and let my ex slide on some payments when he hit a rough patch job-wise. Later, when he was doing well, we ended up back in court, and sure enough, he used it against me and said that I told him he didn't have to pay child support. Long story short, it all worked out in the end though. Not the a-hole for a couple of reasons, but I do hope folks learn from your mistake. As soon as she could afford child support, you should have taken it. It isn't for you, it is for the kids, and as primary caregiver, it is your job to look out for your children's interest. Even if that child support was going into a rainy day fund for medical needs, a college fund, or any number of things, it is her responsibility to plan for and pay her fair share. You are definitely not the a-hole for asking it now, in light of your new circumstances. She does not get a say in how you spend the money. There is no magic wall that you can put in place to direct dollars earmarked for your kids into solely their stuff. Households don't run that way. Her child support is to supplement your household expenses, and that's why courts treat it as a calculation, a payment, and that's it. There's no monitoring for a reason. As long as your children are getting their needs met, which it sounds like they are, she doesn't get to tell you how to spend the money. I would stop talking with her about it. Remind her it is her obligation to pay. Tell her you want to protect your relationship and keep it civil, so anything further relating to the matter should be directed to your lawyer. Then stick to it and send her to your lawyer with any complaints. As someone that had a contentious divorce related to money, alimony, and child support, the best thing I ever did was stop talking directly and start letting lawyers handle it. Co-parenting and our relationship as caring parents for our child has been better since we no longer have those hot topics coming between us.